congratulations for the successful prisoner swap. We know how long, we can only imagine how long and difficult this has been for you and for the whole team and all of our great diplomats. Talk to me about Brittany. How is she?
Andrea, first off, thanks for having me on this program. It's, I think, important and good to have a chance to talk about these topics. I was grateful to watch the girls prior. No, I wouldn't mind chatting about them as time goes on here. But on Brittany, she's doing well right now. I think you've followed some of the reports that have been released by her agent, Lindsay. But we're grateful to have her back. It was a long, hard slog to get there. And even though we at times have to just keep working day and night to effect a release, every now and then you get that release, and the feeling is almost magical. It was a pleasure to go out to, I guess you say, undisclosed location and meet her on the ground.
We reported it was Abu Dhabi.
I figured it did. But have a chance to meet her and just kind of, in a way, kind of just register her reaction when I was able to come on the plane and tell her that I was taking her home.
And you've said that she immediately, instead of wanting to be alone, and you offered her the privacy immediately, but she wanted to interact and thank the team that brought her back and and really have conversations again with Americans.
Oh yeah, I was almost expecting her, after having been spending 10 months in a Russian penal colony, that she'd want to just relax a little bit, get some time, collect her thoughts, and she moved right past me and went over to talk to the air crew, introduced herself, looked them right in the eye, made a real connection, asked them what their names were. Thanked them, shook their hands, spent some time talking, and only then did she go back down and sit in her seat. And at that point, I still said the same thing. I said, Brittany, we'd like to give you some space so you can kind of, maybe process what you've been through. And she said, oh, no, I want to talk. I've been listening to Russian for the last 10 months, and I want a chance to hear and speak English. And I think the first thing she asked me was, tell me what's going on in the news, what's happening in the world.
Did she and Victor Bout have any interactions, did you, with him on the swap?
I didn't see her because if you were to take a look at the tarmac footage, I was out of position. You know, we set up a kind of what you might call a bridge of spies swap, where they'll actually walk by each other.
Like the famous swap in Berlin.
Just exactly. And as they were doing that, I was absolutely on the other side and couldn't really see or hear anything. I mean, on the way out, I did have a chance to talk to Mr. Bout. As you can imagine, to an extent, I'm the mission commander. And I want to make sure that everyone's okay, to include Mr. Bout. So I went and asked him how he was doing, if he was doing all right in the flight, gave him a sense of what was going to happen once we landed on the ground.
Did he speak to you in English?
He did. He did.
There was some opposition from the prosecutors, as there always is in these exchanges. I've covered them before. But the president made a very tough decision. He
did. I did. I think we know that these prices are steep. And yet, I think to us, it's unacceptable that an American stays in a foreign jail when they're wrongfully detained. And sometimes that price is steep enough to pay. What I can tell you is that the president made a hard decision. He did it after conducting an analysis as to whether Mr. Bout would be a threat to national security going forward. And the very fact that we proceeded let you know that we felt comfortable that we could make this decision and go forward. But the bottom line is that the president truly did make a very tough decision.
You talked to Paul Whelan the day after Brittany came home.
I did.
And we know, and you can't talk about, we've reported for several months about this man, Gerasimov, the Russian assassin. He's in jail in Germany. He's not ours to give up. The Russians want him back. The Germans don't want to give him up. So what assurance could you give Paul Whelan that he would ever come home if we have nothing to give up that meets the Russians' demands? I
mean, Paul, what I will say is I talk to Paul quite often, actually. Probably once every week or two, he'll give me a call and we'll talk for 15 or 30 minutes. In this case, I talked to him for about 30. And I told him, I said, Paul, we're not going to let down our guard here. Our foot's on the gas pedal. We're not taking it off. The president's focused. The Secretary of State's focused. I'm focused. And we're going to find a way to get you back. And I think Paul also knows of some of the successes that we've had. So although Paul is still waiting for us to come home, he's obviously was a little frustrated. He also knows that we've brought back about 15 Americans over the last 9 months. So there's a commitment to bringing him back, and he knows we're still on the fight. I asked him, I said, Paul, if you remember, you were a young Marine, I was a young Army officer, and I said they always taught us that if we're taken, we have to make sure that we keep the faith and know that our country's coming to get us. And I asked Paul to do the same, and I felt by the end of the phone call, he was back to his normal self, kind of laughing a little bit, joking a little bit. But at the same time, I can't imagine his frustration. But we did tell him, we're going to come get you, Paul.
And there are meetings with the Russians even this week?
I wouldn't feel comfortable disclosing that. I know Jake Sullivan gave a little information a few days ago, but those are the things that I try to at least keep close to my chest. I can tell you of one meeting that we had, and that was with Elizabeth Whelan, and that was on Monday. We had a planning session where I think originally we were going to just pull together members of the State Department and the National Security Council, but we partnered with the family. So it was good to have Elizabeth participate in that phone call and give us some things from her perspective. What we often find is that when you are on the government side, sometimes your perspective might be a little limited, and family members might actually come up with something that's very much worth pursuing. And thus, having Elizabeth on that phone call was critical.
And she's Paul's sister. Let's talk about Mark Fogel, another American teacher. You know that the former ambassador, Mike McFaul, knows him well. He taught McFaul's kids and other kids, French and British diplomats. And he is accused of bringing in cannabis, like Brittany was, a higher amount, but any amount is illegal under Russian law. And we don't hear anything about talks for him.
What I can tell you is that the State Department has requested his humanitarian release from the Russian government. We take the determination to be a wrongful detainee and everything that goes into that afterwards very seriously. So I can tell you, for example, when we last year, shortly after the passage of the Levinson Act, we conducted a review of thousands of cases across the world in every single country on earth. We wanted to take a look at every American who was detained to see if we might have missed something. We looked for indicators of wrongfulness. And in doing that, we actually came up with a few cases. This is an active process. It's not passive. We're not sitting there waiting for facts to come our way. We're instead actively pursuing these. And when the facts finally speak to us and they say that this person's wrongfully detained, the indicators are there, then that case becomes wrongful and we pursue it.
So humanitarian release is different from him being a wrongful detainee, the category of Brittany Griner. He still hasn't met that threshold to be part of your hostage negotiations.
That's correct. But again, it's an active process. We're actively searching for and adding information to his file and other files, too.
I have to ask you about Iran. And these three women really made a very persuasive argument that their fathers should be released. And in Tara's case, it's her father and her mother, because her mother doesn't have can't leave the country. So she has not seen her mother since 2018, or her father. What can we do with a very difficult government, just as Russia's a difficult government? Are you working on it?
Of course we are. But first thing, I wouldn't mind just commenting. It was a pleasure to see them here. I know Hana, Ari, and Tara. I've spent time talking to the Iran families, as I have with all the families, and they're amazing ladies. They've thrown themselves heart and soul into the Bring Our Families Home campaign. So not only are they suffering and going through all this pain, but they've been able to take that pain and actually, turn it into something for good. They're actually raising awareness about all the cases.
But they want a meeting with the president.
Yeah.
Why can't they get a meeting, a conversation with the president?
All I can tell you is that the president's aware of these cases. He's briefed weekly on these cases by Secretary Blinken. Secretary Blinken, as you might know, carries a card in his pocket that has the names of every single person who's wrongfully detained. And so whether someone receives a meeting with the president or not, I want you and I want them to know that we're always still working these cases. As I said, we've had 15 returns in the last 9 months.
Yeah, but Trevor
and most
Reed
of them didn't meet the president.
Trevor Reed and Brittany didn't get out until there was a White House meeting. It seems to, when it comes in front of him and becomes more tangible, as with any president.
I could also point to 12 people that have returned in the last 9 months who had no connection to the president at all, because no matter whether a family meets with the president or not, we're working it. You know, we're working at my office, the entire interagency, the State Department, the Department of Defense, the CIA. We're always working these cases. And so whether someone meets with the president or not, I would like everyone to know that we never stop. It's 24/7 business. You came over and visited me at the State Department, and I think you kind of got the atmosphere. I mean, my office is like a hospital emergency room. It's just constantly trying to bring people back. When we're coming back from a case like Brittany, I'm en route back from Dulles to the State Department, and I'm on the phone already working on cases that we are still trying to progress with. So it's a busy process, but we're not going to let up. We will be relentless.